A mother reflects on her mistakes and the emotional moment her daughter finally opened her heart again. Before I begin, I want you to listen carefully because some stories are meant to touch the part of you you usually hide. Have you ever wondered if it's ever too late to say, "I'm sorry"? This story will touch your heart. This story is about a mother, a daughter, and a forgiveness that took decades to arrive. A mother lost her daughter for 30 years until one night changed everything. If you're ready to step into this journey with me, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like these live because of your support. Now, take a deep breath and let me take you to the day my daughter forgave me. My name is Ilara Dawn. I am 63 years old, though I have often felt older. Perhaps that is what life does to you. It stacks years on your heart long before they show on your face. I never imagined that forgiveness could feel like the warm sun rising after a lifetime of frost. Not when I had lost her, the one person who mattered most. Her name is Isabella, my daughter, my heart. 35 years ago, I made mistakes I can barely bear to admit. Mistakes that drove her away when she was only 10. Mistakes that created a silence between us so vast that even time seemed powerless to bridge it. And yet, here we are. It all began with a letter, or rather a journal I had kept during those chaotic years. A journal she found when she was 25. Reading her reaction to my words, I realized she had been carrying my absence in ways I could never imagine. That night, I resolved I would face her, not as the woman she resented, but as the mother who had loved her even in her own flawed, broken way. I arrived at her apartment one crisp autumn evening, leaves falling like memories across the sidewalk. My hands shook, not from the cold, but from the anticipation of confronting a lifetime of pain. I knocked. She opened the door, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. She looked like herself, and yet like someone I had never truly seen. A grown woman with strength I had helped forge through absence and resilience. I need to talk to you, I managed, my voice barely a whisper. She studied me, eyes guarded, but not unkind. You've said a lot of things in letters, Mom, but words are cheap now. What do you want me to do? I took a deep breath. I want to be here. I want to be present. I want forgiveness. I don't expect it, but I hope for it. Her expression softened slightly, and she stepped aside, allowing me to enter. That simple gesture, as small as it seemed, felt monumental, like the first crack in a wall I had spent decades building around my own heart. We sat and we talked. Hours passed as she listened, truly listened, to the confessions I had rehearsed for 30 years. And for the first time, I felt her anger ebbing, replaced by understanding. By the time the night ended, she said only 4 words. I forgive you, Mom. I don't think I can ever describe the flood of relief and love that washed over me. It wasn't just her forgiveness. It was the healing of a wound I didn't know I carried so deeply. And in that moment, I realized something essential. Forgiveness is never too late, and love, true, unconditional love, can find a way back even after decades of silence. I can still remember the day everything changed, though my memory of it is tinged with guilt and a longing I never thought I could put into words. Isabella was 10 years old. 10, and already wise beyond her years because life had forced her to be. That day, I was late picking her up from school. my mind tangled in a whirlwind of work deadlines and bills and the endless demands of adulthood that always seemed to pull me in 100 directions at once. When I arrived, she was sitting alone on the playground bench, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the ground. Her backpack rested beside her, straps worn and fraying. I remember my chest tightening as I walked toward her, and for a brief second I thought I could just apologize and everything would be fine. But words failed me. I... I'm sorry, I said, my voice cracking. She looked up. Those 10-year-old eyes, so full of disappointment, pierced straight through me. "You're always busy, Mom," she said softly. "I don't even know why you come at all." I wanted to argue, to explain, to justify my absence, but I couldn't. There was no excuse that could erase the loneliness I had caused her. And so, instead, I did what I had done too many times before. I walked away, leaving her staring at my retreating back. That moment, small as it seemed at the time, became the seed of a silence that would last decades. A silence filled with letters I never sent, conversations I never had, and a mother's desperate attempts to prove love without success. Over the years, I watched her grow from a bright, hopeful girl into a young woman who wore her independence like armor. She moved out at 18, leaving behind not just the house we shared, but the small fragments of trust we had left. Phone calls became rare, letters remained unanswered, and I, in my own stubborn way, retreated into my work, into my routines, convincing myself that time would heal everything. But it never did. 30 years of unanswered calls and unopened letters weigh on a heart like stones. I had tried to fill my life with meaningful work, with other relationships, with children of my own. Yes, there were moments of joy, but there was always a hollow space where her laughter should have been, a void filled with regret and unspoken apologies. And then came the journal. I had kept it hidden, tucked in a drawer I rarely opened, filled with my thoughts, confessions, and desperate attempts to make sense of my failures. I never imagined she would find it, but when she did, it was like exposing a wound that had finally begun to bleed. The letter she read, a single page buried in that journal, said everything I had failed to say to her in life. I wrote of my love, my regrets, my shame, and my longing to be the mother she deserved. I wrote of the nights I lay awake, crying silently, wishing I could undo the past. I wrote of a daughter I feared I had lost forever. When she called me that first night after reading my words, I felt my world tremble. I wasn't sure if I had been given a chance to repair the damage or if I was simply reopening old wounds. But her voice, calm yet trembling, told me that perhaps, just perhaps, forgiveness was possible. Sitting across from her now, in the dimly lit apartment, I see the same eyes that had once held disappointment and anger, but tonight they are softened with understanding, as if she sees the woman I am now, not the mother I was then. We talk in fragments at first, careful, cautious, testing the waters. But as the minutes stretch into hours, the dam of years slowly begins to break. We share memories, some bitter, some sweet. We laugh quietly at small, forgotten jokes. And for the first time in decades, I feel the weight of my absence begin to lift. Her forgiveness is not a word, it is a quiet presence, a gentle lifting of a burden I didn't fully understand I carried. When she finally says, "I forgive you, Mom," I close my eyes, letting the tears fall freely, feeling 30 years of pain, love, and longing wash away in a single, perfect moment. And in that moment, I know forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It is about giving yourself permission to heal,
even when the wounds are decades old. I can still see her 10-year-old face so clearly, her small hands clutching a worn teddy bear, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and disappointment. That day, I failed her in a way that I didn't understand at the time. I had thought that as long as I provided, as long as I was present in the practical sense, she would feel loved. But love is not measured in provision, it is measured in presence, in attention, in acknowledgement of who someone truly is. I remember the first fight that really drove a wedge between us. I was so exhausted from work that I snapped at her for something small, something completely trivial. I don't even recall what it was now, but I remember her face, the confusion, the hurt, the sudden understanding that I could not be trusted with her feelings. That look stayed with me, carved into my heart, even when I told myself I had moved on. Over the years, I tried to compensate. I sent gifts, letters, flowers for birthdays. I tried calling, sometimes leaving long messages pouring out my heart, but she never responded. Each silence was like a stone in my chest. Each unanswered call reinforced the idea that perhaps I had lost her forever. And in that loss, I found a hollow emptiness I carried for decades. As we sat in her apartment that night, I could feel her measuring me, cautiously, like one tests the surface of water before diving in. I knew she had her defenses up. How could she not? I had been absent for more than 30 years, not just physically, but emotionally. I had given her a life, yes, but I had failed to be the mother she needed in her most vulnerable moments. I remember the day I moved out, I said softly, my voice trembling. I remember seeing you pack your things, your little face turned away from me, and I thought maybe this is what you needed. I thought that maybe distance would heal what I couldn't. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. She looked at me then, and I saw it. The hint of the little girl she had been, the shadow of the anger she carried, and the woman she had become, shaped by my absence. She nodded slowly. I remember it too, she said. And for years, I hated you for leaving me. I hated you for not seeing me, for not being the mother I needed.
Her words hit me like a wave, strong enough to knock the breath out of me, yet cleansing in a way I hadn't expected. For 30 years, I had carried my guilt alone, believing it was mine to bear. And now she spoke, not just of her pain, but of her survival. She had survived, and in her survival, she had found strength I had never acknowledged in myself. I know, I whispered. I know I failed you. I know I wasn't there when you needed me most, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, if you'll let me. There was a long pause, one that felt like eternity. Then she reached out and placed her hand over mine. The warmth of her touch was almost unbearable. Mom, she said, I don't want to spend my life holding on to that hate anymore. I want to let it go. I felt tears streaming down my cheeks, but I couldn't stop them. This was the moment I had prayed for in the silence of my nights, in the depths of my solitude. This was the forgiveness I had longed to hear, the absolution I had begged for without words. And now, finally, I had it. We talked until the early hours of the morning, sharing stories I had never known, memories I had only imagined, and emotions I had buried so deep I thought they would never resurface. For the first time in decades, I felt whole, not because the past had changed, but because we had acknowledged it together. As I left her apartment that night, stepping into the quiet streets, I realized something profound.
The power of forgiveness does not erase the pain. It does not rewrite history, but it heals the soul. It allows two hearts once fractured by time and mistakes to begin again. And for the first time, I knew that my love for my daughter, imperfect and flawed as it had always been, could finally be enough.
Even after 30 years, I can still remember the first time I truly saw her hurt, the day I didn't come to her school recital. I had convinced myself that work deadlines were more important, that the world would understand why I wasn't there, but Isabella never forgot. I remember standing outside the auditorium, watching her classmates file in, their mothers and fathers guiding them. She walked alone, clutching her music sheet like a shield. That day, I wasn't the mother who cheered from the front row. I was the one who promised and failed. The hurt in her eyes, even then, told me that no explanation, no amount of love given later could ever fully undo the loneliness she felt. And yet, in her silence, she learned to survive, to be strong, to navigate a world that sometimes abandoned her even when it shouldn't have. I remember the nights I lay awake, wondering if I would ever hear her voice, not as a child, but as the woman she had become. I imagine her resentment, her quiet anger, the subtle ways she had protected herself from the hurt I caused. And in those imaginings, I could feel the years of my absence weigh down on me like chains. She came to see me after finding my journal, and I watched her face as she read the words I had written in desperation, my fears laid bare, my apologies woven into ink and paper. I could see her processing each line, each confession, with a mixture of disbelief and cautious hope. She said little at first, but I could sense her heart softening. The wall she had built around herself, the armor of decades, began to crack. Not completely, not yet, but enough for our connection to start healing. We spent hours that night walking through memories, revisiting the small moments that had shaped her life and mine. She asked questions I hadn't expected, questions about choices, about regrets, about love. And I answered as honestly as I could, my voice trembling with the weight of the years. At one point, she stopped me. "Mom," she said quietly, "I don't need you to justify your absence. I need you to be here now. That's enough." Her words pierced me with both relief and sorrow. Relief because finally, at 63 years old, I could feel the possibility of redemption. Sorrow because it had taken so long, 30 years, to reach this moment. And yet, in that sorrow, there was a strange beauty. The truth, even delayed, had power. The forgiveness she offered, even after decades of silence, was more than I had dared hope for. It was a gift that neither time nor distance could diminish. I realized that day that life doesn't always offer second chances. Sometimes it gives them, but only if we are brave enough to accept them. And we had been brave, both of us, in our own ways, to reach this point. As the night drew to a close, I felt a peace I hadn't known in decades. It wasn't the erasure of the past. It was the acknowledgement of it, the honoring of our shared pain, and the decision to move forward together. Isabella forgave me, but in that forgiveness, she also reminded me that love, even flawed, can endure. That connection, once broken, can be rebuilt, not perfectly, not without effort, but with honesty, presence, and heart. Walking home that night, the city lights reflected off the wet pavement, and I felt lighter than I had in 30 years. I carried the memory of her forgiveness like a precious stone in my chest, warming me from within. I knew in that moment it wasn't too late, not for her, not for me, and not for the love that had always existed between us, waiting patiently for its time to return. We sat together on the couch, the silence stretching between us, but not the heavy silence of anger. This was a quiet that felt like possibility. She turned to me, her eyes glistening, reflecting a mixture of pain, understanding, and hope.
I never stopped loving you, Mom, she whispered, even when I was angry, even when I thought I hated you. I didn't. I didn't know how to bridge the distance between us. I felt my chest tighten, the years of regret pressing against me all at once. 30 years of absence, missteps, and unspoken words, all condensed into this single fragile moment. I never meant to hurt you, I said softly, my voice trembling. I thought I was doing the best I could, but I failed you. I failed you in ways I can't even begin to make right. She shook her head. You did what you could at the time. That's all anyone can do. And now we can start over. Tears streamed down both our faces. For the first time in decades, we let ourselves truly feel what we had carried alone for so long. Fear, anger, grief, and finally, relief. I reached for her hand, and she held it tightly, as if anchoring both of us to the same fragile, tender truth. We were still mother and daughter. We talked for hours, sharing stories we had never told. She told me about the small moments that had hurt her, the nights she cried herself to sleep, the milestones I had missed. I told her about the nights I lay awake, regretting every missed opportunity, praying silently for her forgiveness. There was laughter, too. Soft, tentative laughter at the absurdities of life, the memories we had forgotten, the shared moments that had remained tucked away in our hearts. And slowly, the weight of 30 years of pain began to lift. When she finally said, "I forgive you, Mom," I felt a warmth spread through me, a relief so profound it was almost like a second birth. The forgiveness she offered wasn't just a release for me, it was a healing for both of us. In that moment, I realized something essential. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It's about seeing the truth of each other's hearts, accepting the flaws, and choosing to move forward with love. We embraced then, holding on to each other as if to seal the years lost, as if to whisper into the universe that our bond had endured, despite everything. And in that embrace, I understood the truth I had always hoped to reach. Love, even delayed, can find its way home. As I sit here now, reflecting on that night, I am filled with gratitude. Gratitude for her courage, her patience, her willingness to forgive. Gratitude for the lesson that it is never too late to mend what is broken, to heal old wounds, to reconnect with the people we love. Life is fragile, fleeting, and often imperfect, but the connections we nurture, even when delayed, are worth everything. Forgiveness is a gift we give to others, yes, but more importantly, it is a gift we give to ourselves.
To anyone listening, hold your loved ones close. Speak the words you've been afraid to say. Forgive and be forgiven. Life's too short to let silence linger. Even now, decades later, I can see her small face so vividly, the little girl I sometimes think I never really got to know.
Isabella, with her golden brown curls and eyes too big for her tiny face, always asking questions I didn't have answers for. I remember the afternoons I was too busy to read her bedtime stories. She would sit beside me, her head resting on my arm, and I would smile through a fog of exhaustion, nodding and promising I would read tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. There were birthdays I forgot, school plays I missed, soccer games I ignored, not out of malice, but out of distraction, fear, and a misguided sense of responsibility. And in every missed moment, I unknowingly built a wall between us, a wall that only grew taller as she did. It was during these quiet reflections that I understood the gravity of what forgiveness truly meant. Isabella wasn't just forgiving me for being absent. She was forgiving herself for carrying the weight of my failures. She was forgiving the universe for the gaps in our lives, for the silence that echoed for decades. I also remembered the small victories, the glimpses of joy I did manage to share with her. The time we baked cookies, and she giggled when I accidentally dropped flour on her nose. The late-night talks about stars, when she confided her dreams and fears. Those moments, fleeting as they were, became the fragile threads that held our bond together through years of distance. As we continued to talk that night, she shared her own memories, both joyful and painful. She told me how she had learned to be self-reliant, how she had trusted few people, and how she had secretly hoped I would one day see her as more than just the child I had failed to protect. Her words cut deep, but they also healed. In that exchange, I realized that forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about acknowledging it fully and choosing to move forward together. She said it softly. I spent so long carrying this anger. I thought forgiving you would be impossible, but tonight it feels like breathing again. I reached for her hand. And I've spent so long hoping you would, hoping I could make it right, even a little. She smiled then, a smile that held years of pain, understanding, and finally, release. It was a smile that belonged to the woman she had become, a woman strong enough to forgive, yet tender enough to love. That night, I learned a lesson I will carry for the rest of my life. No matter how long it takes, no matter how deep the pain, love and forgiveness can bridge even the widest chasms. The years we lost cannot be returned, but the moments we share now, from this point forward, can be infused with intention, care, and presence. Every tear we shed together that night wasn't just sorrow, it was a cleansing. Every story we shared wasn't just recollection, it was restoration. And in that quiet, intimate space, I felt the profound truth of motherhood, that love, no matter how delayed, can still find its way home. As I sat in Isabella's apartment that night, holding her hand, I could feel the years pressing against me, not in anger, but in the quiet gravity of everything I had missed. I thought about all the mornings I didn't wake up early enough to see her off to school, all the nights I had been too distracted to hear her fears whispered in the dark. I remembered one morning vividly, the first time she cried in my arms after a fight at school. She had tripped over her words, trying to explain that her classmates had teased her, and I, flustered by my own deadlines, had told her to toughen up. Her little shoulders had shook as she buried her face into my chest. I had patted her back and promised her I understood, but I hadn't. Not really. That memory haunted me. I had always believed I was doing enough by being present in a practical sense, feeding her, providing clothes, paying for tutors. But the moments she truly needed me, emotionally, I had failed. And those failures, repeated endlessly over the years, became the cracks that widened the distance between us. I remembered the day she left for college. She was 17, standing at the threshold of adulthood with her suitcase in hand, excitement and fear dancing in her eyes. I tried to say something meaningful, but my words came out awkward, half-formed. She hugged me tightly, said, "I love you," and walked out the door. I watched her leave, and for the first time, I felt the sharp sting of my own absence. That day, I vowed silently that I would do better, but life has a way of distracting even the best intentions. Deadlines, responsibilities, other obligations, they all conspired to keep me from being the mother I wanted to be. And so the distance remained, a silent chasm that neither of us could bridge alone. Now, sitting across from her decades later, I realized the true weight of those lost years. Every missed recital, every ignored tear, every unspoken word, they had all left a mark. And yet here she was, offering forgiveness, allowing me to step back into her life. Her voice broke my thoughts. "Mom, I've carried this anger for so long, but I want you to know I also carried love. I just didn't know how to reconcile it with the hurt." "I know, my love. I know. And I'm so sorry for every moment I let you down. Every time I wasn't enough. Every time I wasn't there for you. I'm sorry." She smiled softly. "I know you are. And now we have a chance to heal, to really be mother and daughter, finally."
It was in that moment I understood something I had longed to grasp for decades. Forgiveness is not just a gift for the one who wronged. It is liberation for the one who forgives. In forgiving me, Isabella was freeing herself from the pain that had weighed on her for years, just as much as she was freeing me. The night stretched on, filled with conversation, tears, laughter, and silent understanding. I realized that reconciliation is not a single act. It is a process, a series of choices to acknowledge, to connect, and to love despite the scars of the past. Each shared story, each laugh, each tear was another brick in the bridge we were building over decades of silence. And in that quiet, tender space, I felt the profound, healing power of love restored. As she spoke softly across the couch, I could see not just the woman Isabella had become, but the child she once was, and the girl she had longed for me to be present for. She told me about her teenage years, the nights she cried silently in her room when I wasn't there, the small victories she had achieved alone, the moments she had hoped I would notice. "I learned to take care of myself early," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I became independent because I had to, but I also became wary of trusting anyone completely. Even my friends, I kept a part of myself hidden because I feared being abandoned again." Her words pierced my heart. 30 years of absence, every missed call, every forgotten birthday had left an invisible scar on her soul. And yet, in her voice, I also heard resilience, strength, and an extraordinary capacity to forgive. I listened as she described the milestones I had missed, the graduation, her first job, the heartbreaks she endured alone. Each story she shared was a reminder of the years lost, but also a testament to her endurance. She had carried the weight of my absence with grace and courage I had never fully acknowledged. "I've carried resentment for years," she admitted, tears glistening in her eyes. "But I also carried hope. Hope that one day you would see me, really see me, and understand how much your absence hurt. And tonight, I finally feel you understand." I reached across the couch and took her hands in mine. "I see you now, Bella. I see you completely. I see your pain, your courage, your heart, and I am so proud of the woman you have become despite everything." She smiled through tears. "I'm proud of you too, Mom,
for finally being here, for finally being present, not just in body, but in heart. In that moment, I realized that reconciliation is not about erasing the past. It is about embracing it, understanding it, and choosing to move forward with honesty and love. It is about recognizing the pain, acknowledging the hurt, and allowing forgiveness to create a new path.
In that quiet, intimate morning, we shared stories of our lives, our regrets, our dreams, and our fears. We spoke not just as mother and daughter, but as two women who had endured decades of separation and emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. I realized something profound. Motherhood is not about perfection. It is about presence, about love, about showing up even when it is hard. It is about embracing the broken pieces and finding the beauty in their imperfect arrangement. And Isabella, my beloved Isabella, had shown me that forgiveness, though difficult, is the most powerful act of love. As I walked home that morning, the city around me seemed different, brighter, softer, full of promise. I carried Isabella's forgiveness in my heart, a treasure I would cherish for the rest of my life. I knew that the past would always be a part of us, but it would no longer define us. The bridge between mother and daughter, built slowly with honesty, tears, and love, would now carry us forward. And I knew in every fiber of my being that it was never too late to rebuild, to love, to forgive, and to heal. Thank you, dear listeners, for joining me on this journey of love, loss, and forgiveness. I hope this story reminded you of the power of connection, the importance of presence, and the beauty of forgiving and being forgiven. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows me to continue sharing stories that heal, comfort, and inspire. And I'd love to hear from you. Comment below your city name and share where you're listening from. Every story feels more meaningful when we know it reaches hearts across the world. Remember, it is never too late to say I'm sorry, never too late to forgive, and never too late to love. I sat by the window that evening, the soft glow of the setting sun spilling across the room. Isabella had gone to bed, her presence still lingering like a gentle warmth in the apartment. I breathed deeply, feeling a peace I hadn't known in decades. The years of regret, the missed birthdays, the moments lost to distraction, all of it seemed to settle softly around me, not as a burden, but as a testament to the journey we had taken together, a journey from silence to understanding, from absence to presence, from pain to forgiveness. I thought about the little girl she had been and the woman she had become, strong, compassionate, resilient, and I thought about myself, imperfect, flawed, yet blessed to witness her forgiveness, to be given a second chance at love. I whispered softly to the empty room, words meant for both of us. Life is short, love is endless, and it is never too late to heal. As the city lights began to twinkle outside, I felt gratitude swell in my heart. Gratitude for forgiveness, for love, for the courage it takes to face the past and embrace the present. And in that still, serene moment, I knew that whatever years remained for me, they would be filled with connection, with care, and with the kind of love that heals. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you of the power of forgiveness, the importance of love, and the courage it takes to reconnect with those who matter most. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel.
Your support helps me continue sharing stories that comfort, inspire, and heal. And I'd love to hear from you. Comment your city name below and let me know where you're listening from. Every story feels more alive when it reaches hearts around the world. Remember, it's never too late to say I'm sorry, to forgive, and to love deeply.